Hey, what's up, guys? You know I like these facsimile editions. Every week they come out. DC's actually they're making like giant, like $16 comics that like are giant comics. It's like you would be a toddler reading a comic. But I remember that back in the day, DFC Sons. You remember they used to make giant comics too. Not I don't mean like a digest. I mean like they literally were giant comics. So anyway, for some reason, they're reprinting Our Army at War, right? Of course, Sergeant Rock, right? Taking out a Tiger tank with a bazooka, which is impossible. But I got this. It's fun to see it for a number of reasons, and I got this because this is. I mean, this is just another issue of Sergeant Rock from 1964. The story, but who is the blazing enemy we dared not show on the cover? Who? So like it's still appealing to the young, the kid. Of course, this is the introduction of probably one of the best war comics produced by a DC or a major publisher. Right? Who's that? Who is it? Well, we'll find out. Like, oh, Superboy. Remember Superboy? I tell you, man. When I was growing up, man, Superboy, he was like, right, he was not Superman. He had Crypto, Lana Lang, right? It was the Legion of Superheroes, and then the Crisis friggin' killed him, and then made it where he never existed. That never set right for me. So this is, I remember giving you a public service announcement. Be careful with matches, right? The Teenage Club. Gosh, Superboy. Our community, like they have a community. Like they're actually a community of people. Anyway, and then also, like I said, cooperation with the National Social Welfare Assembly. Okay. Anyway, so just joking around. Not really. You know me. We got Sergeant Rock here. Already we have Joe Kubert art. Like, I mean, you could say he's been drawing for a while, but his style really started to kind of take a thing of its own around this time. It's 1964. So, anyway, so the whole idea of this is for some reason, Little Short Shot. Remember him? The Native American. No, the Indian. Right? He had the feathers in his helmet. I remember when I first saw Sergeant Rock comics as a kid. It was already like the '80s stuff. I thought that was so cool that you had, the Combat Happy Joes of Easy Company. They all had like they were all kind of like had their own little gimmick. Yeah, and he's like, basically, I give you the feather my pop sent you, Sarge. If you lose it, let the enemy snatch you. You're dishonorably discharged back to the pale faces. Oh, so already we have of course, remember I keep telling you that the American view of the Indian, right, the Aboriginal inhabitants of America, was more tinged with respect than you think, and particularly the decades after it was all over. I mean, in the dawn of the 20th century, there was still sort of like a respect for the Indians. Okay, how many people I know said, "Oh, I'm part Cherokee." I mean, it's like a joke, but it's not a joke because I remember a lot of people telling me that growing up. I just like this. This feather is this long to make a target out of you. Only a brave chief can keep his original full length because you gotta get shot at. I kind of like that. Anyway, yeah, it's Sergeant Rock. Of course, the Germans. I am in the Wehrmacht with the what kind of gun is that? But I'm in the Wehrmacht, but I must wear the symbol of my Führer. So, and of course, the Germans can't fight, but really, the stories are about the Americans. And of course, his feathers getting small. Well, it's typical Sergeant Rock. It's kind of there's humor in it. You kind of like you like these guys, and it keeps getting shorter and shorter. Of course, he shoots down the planes. Sergeant Rock was known for shooting down planes with Tommy guns. I like this. this. Uh, Save your crutches, jokers. I'm not gonna be called old lady in a rocking chair yet. Yeah, it's just, well, yeah, it's the story. It is what it is. I could look at this, and he's taking out tiger tanks with a bazooka. Whatever. It's that's not what I'm here for. It's typical Sergeant Rock. Although in the '80s, there were some Sergeant Rock stories and some Hornet Tank stories in GI Combat, which was the other magazine, the other comic. there were some stories that you started to get more stuff from the other side. I mean, was it James Warren? His run on the Haunted Tank was really really good. Because even Kanigher, who probably wrote both these stories and definitely wrote what I'm going to show you now. Some of the stories in the '80s, man, they made some really good, grim stories where the Germans were seen as, and the Japanese were seen as human beings. So, but that was, of course, near the end of the run in the '80s. Right? So now, who is it? Who is the enemy we dare not show on the cover? Well, this is the enemy ace, right? Hans von Hammer, right? The enemy ace. Of course, this is a German character. Okay, this was a big deal back then. They were, you could say these guys are hucksters, but they were trying all kinds of ideas. The Frenchman was a gallant opponent. He's saluting me through the smoke that is his shroud. Now, the thing, too, with Enemy Ace, coming into a war that didn't have a ton of comics about World War One. Right? So the opportunity for Joe Kubert to really, show stuff like this, draw these great landscapes, and to draw, really technical pictures of the tri-wing Fokkers and the Spads and the Spandaus and all the different aircraft. And of course, Hans von Hammer is the whole idea of him is, of course, because he's German, right? So, and you have the war, like the First War. So, I guess you can get around the ideological aspects of what was still, in some ways, you could argue, like sort of a 19th century driven war, but with the dawn of the technology, right? And so you can really explore the anti-war themes, okay, which it's hard to do with Rock and Haunted Tank and all the other ones, the losers and stuff. And you just see how the aerial combat. I mean, this is something like the Japanese were making tons of comics like this. This is the closest thing you got to that, at least in DC Comics. The horror of that these men don't have parachutes, right? Like you said, like Arkham Reporter said, a lot of these things are made out of canvas and wood. Right? He's finished. Right? The Observer's still trying to firing to find me through the smoke. Yeah. But the sky gives no one a second chance. It was just, what a shift that you had in comics from this. I mean, this is one of the best American war comics that there was. Okay. And what is this? G.I. Joe. What is it? They had a G.I. Joe comic? Interesting. I don't remember this. Of course, I don't know if this was the G.I. Joe, based on the action figures. I don't know anything. Because G.I. Joe, remember, G.I. Joe was like a nickname back in the day, right? General Issue Joe. Now I just want, who got drafted. I'm just doing my job, and then when I go home. So, of course, then you got the toy. You got toy soldiers. Oh, Rockville Center. Remember Rockville Center? Had a great used bookstore there. Anyway, we have some educational stuff here, right? And now we have the conclusion. Right? You used to do that. They used to have the 3-part stories. Right? Of course, he got wounded, and the whole idea of they always had this scene because remember this was not a recurring feature. I think Kanigher reused this a lot. The theme of where he's in the Black Forest, where he, of course, he's a Von, so he's an aristocratic descent, and he always sees the wolf, right? If I killed you, I would lose my only friend. Right? I wonder if animals call you a killing machine too. Right? Now both of us return to the lonely business of killing. I always liked that. I was reminded of this Lone Wolf and Cub with the wolves when the wolves see him, and then they don't mess with him. Ito Agami, but it was the same thing here. Killer's Moon. So anyway, it just. The art, the story, right? The Zeppelins. I told you about this fucking airship. No thanks. His guns are jammed. He must break off the attack, right? The British pilot rams into kamikazes, the Zeppelin. He deliberately dove into the Zeppelin, right? Yeah. He was a first-class fighting man. He more than evened the score. He downed the Zepp I was guarding. So you can see the respect for the enemy, that this character had. It was just, I don't even think they realized what they had done here. But like I said, this comic went on for many, many years. Eventually, John Severin, who had worked at EC Comics and other ones, John Severin became the artist with his style, his amazing art style for Enemy Ace. Anyway, it was just cool, kind of cool looking at that. I remember I used to have 80-page giant, right? 80-page giant. Yeah. And what's interesting here, right? The interaction between the audience. Okay, now I remember a lot of you kids reading this, they're like, "Oh, this is a German character." Oh, I don't know if I like this, but it is the first war, and also there's still that romantic idea of these guys flying in these planes with no, what the hell, parachute? What the hell is that? And Sergeant Rock speaker, is the Hammer of Hell a human killing machine or a hero? Should this be the first and last you'll ever see of Von Hammer, or the beginning? Let's know what you think, right? So they of course, they address National Periodical Publications, which was DC's actual name. So anyway, and of course, Combat Corner, you get the people writing letters. So anyway, I always said that it's always funny that the guys writing letters to these comics, young teenagers and whatnot, were probably, a lot of them ended up in Vietnam, And they show the different comics. Look at the war comics they had, like Army at War, Star Spangled War, Black Hawk, Tomahawk. Hey, those red coats. GI Combat, of course. GI Combat and Sergeant Rock was the only ones that survived into the 80s. A nice little look at the man. The art was so good. I had the reprint of this that they had in black and white to showcase, but it's nice to see the colors reprinted too. I like to see both. And that's who is the enemy. Well, ironically, it turned out, I guess, that we're the enemy, huh? Actually, we're way past even that, aren't we? Later.